has a conflict with our client in Watertown, so I think we have enough for a quorum here. And it looks like, I don't know that we needed your attendance, but I appreciate you coming, Mo. Since you're first up on the agenda, let me open the meeting actually first and read our lovely governor's statement. So pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, section 18, and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Medfield Permanent Building Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen or view this meeting while in progress may do so by following the instructions on the agenda and meeting notice. All right, so with that, the meeting will come to order, and just to note for everyone that the meeting is being recorded. All right, first up on the agenda tonight, we're gonna have to be brief. We've got about 20 minutes before the SBC starts, but we do have a recommendation to award the contract for the water treatment plant in front of us this evening. You all should have received that from me, I believe a couple of weeks ago before town meeting, pending obviously the outcome of the town meeting vote. So I will turn it over to Mo. Mo, I don't know if you have anything to say about it or if you're just here to answer questions if there are any.
I was just here to answer any questions that you might have, but we did get some favorable bids. Bisco, who hasn't done many, I know a good amount of large projects, but they're still very qualified to do the job that we're looking for. Came in a little under budget that we were looking at. So our engineers did their due diligence and reviewed all their references and all their quantities and totals, and they're very satisfied with having them take this job.
So here's the bid tab up on the screen, if you all can see that. There were 4 bids received deemed qualified. Bisco Building Systems with the lowest bid, and the intention here is that the bid include their base bid and alternate A1 for a total awarded contract of $8,279,142.99. As you note here, if you're looking at that total bid price, including alternate A1, they are the low bidder by over $700,000. So noticeable difference there. We do have recommendation letter as noted from Environmental Partners, the designer, and Woodard and Curran also supported this recommendation for award. Tom, Mike, any questions?
I don't have any questions. I mean, my only comment, I guess, is that, you know, they're 12.5% low. The biggest job they've done to date is like $3.5 million. So, you know, the last thing we need is for them to not be able to perform a job of this size. So it sounds like everyone's aware that they've never done a job this size. Mo, I know you said that. That's fine. And the letter stated that as well. I get a little squirrely, if you will, when I see somebody who's over 10% low, plus, you know, this will be the largest job they've done, you know, ×3. So I just, this really just a comment. Like, I'm not against hiring them, but, you know, that's really the only problem I see with it.
We got some good engineering backup that's going to be, you know, dealing with them day to day. So I don't have any reservations myself, but I do understand. I guess you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I get it. The feedback was kind of peripheral from the last people they've worked with. It was like, yeah, they're fine. You know, it wasn't bad. Nothing was stood out. And it's coincidental that they're, yeah, I mean, it's, if you don't have any hesitations, the engineers don't have any hesitations, and if
In our OPM
owner's
too.
rep says that they're good too, so I'm fine with it, but just want to kind of note my reservation with the.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a fair statement. You know, I think you know, I'd lean heavily on the engineers and the OPM who work in this business every day. And if they're comfortable with this, I would be comfortable with it personally, with their oversight, just to ensure. And then obviously we're going to have oversight too as the project proceeds into construction. And so if anything arises that we get concerned about, we certainly don't need to wait till the end or till something goes horribly wrong or something before calling anything out. So this won't be just sign off on the contract and then move on. We're gonna be looking for regular reports from the design and construction team as this moves into construction phase. As well, we'll want to be reviewing all invoices on the project and getting regular schedule updates to ensure they're proceeding according to the contract schedule.
Yep. Okay.
But your reservations are noted, Mike.
And we'll make sure you're all kept up to date right through the project.
Yeah, Mo, we'll figure out a way to do it. I think, you know, at the very least, we'll want to be having a monthly update with the PBC, just going through construction progress, schedule, and invoices. Typically, once a month is adequate for that. So, and usually that would be around the middle of the month. That way, the invoices are prepped from the previous month. But we can talk about scheduling for that as we move forward.
Sure.
This isn't bonded, is it?
There should be bonds on this project.
Okay, so there's a bond against it too. Okay.
Yeah, there should be payment and
Yes.
performance bonds. Yeah.
Okay.
They
okay,
do
good.
have performance bonds.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
All right. With that, if no one has any other questions, I'll entertain a motion to recommend award of the contract to for the water treatment project to Bishko Building Systems in the amount of $8,279,142.99. Tom, Mike, anyone?
I'll second that.
No, we need the motion first.
I need a motion to, I will accept. I'll make a motion to accept Bisco Building Systems in the amount of $8,279,142.99.
And second, Mike? Did we lose Mike?
No. Yep.
Mike, you with us? I don't see him on my screen. Did we lose him?
I don't see him on there. You're gonna have to wait.
Yeah, he's.
Let's see if
I'll
we can get
text
back
him
in.
and see if he can hop back on. Might have had an issue with internet or something. Whose dog is barking? Is that yours, Mom?
No, no, I think that was Christine. Yeah.
That was Christine.
He said he was.
Quite cute.
He said he was trying to hop back on. Let me see. I'll just keep an eye out for him. There he is. Let me promote him.
Yep, he's there.
Mike, can you hear us? You're on mute if you might still be logging in.
How about now?
Yep, there you go.
Great, you're back.
All right. I was recommending Bisco. I was motioning to recommend.
Oh, so we lost you because we never heard that recommendation. So we had a motion from Tom. So if you want a second,
That's fine.
all right.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Roll call vote, Tom Erb,
Yes.
Mike Weber,
Yes.
and Mike Quinlan also votes yes. Thanks, Mo. You are
Okay,
free
All
to
right,
have the
thank-
rest of your evening to yourself. Are you-
thanks a lot.
All right.
Thank you, Mo.
Have a great night,
Have a
guys.
good one.
I'm out.
Bye-bye.
All right, we got about 12 more minutes, but I think we can get through a couple more things. Next up, we have an open meeting law complaint filed by Chris Mchugh Potts. And I know Christine has some background on this, but essentially, you all may remember that Mike Sullivan used to do all our minutes, and unfortunately, he was backed up on them when he retired. And as such, his steno books don't seem to be readily available. I think they may have been cleaned out by his family after he passed. So Christine, do you want to give us an update on this
Sure.
open meeting law complaint? And you know, I know we've acknowledged that we're having this meeting, and then we should talk about, we'd look to you and town council to advise how to proceed.
So I spoke with the Attorney General's office, and I apologize. When the open meeting law complaint form came in, I contacted Mike immediately. He contacted all of you and sent a copy of it to you. Unfortunately, I was in the middle of planning for town meeting, and I moved on to something else without finishing this, and I should have reminded you that you needed to hold a meeting within the 14 days. So we fell off that time schedule. I talked to Erica Warren, who is a paralegal in the Attorney General's office. She asked that I respond in writing, and I have forwarded a copy to Chris as well, saying that we would have the meeting this evening. You would all acknowledge that you've received the complaint, and I would work with you. You can designate me to start responding to it, and I will start working with you to see if you can put together, the remedy for the situation is to recreate the minutes from 2018, essentially. So I will start working with all of you. I know I've reached out a little bit when this first happened, when I had some time to reach out and see if you could start pulling together your calendars, your notes, anything that you may have from 2018 that would allow me to work back and recreate those minutes from that time period. So
Yeah, my question on that, Christine, is we could certainly pull together what we have in terms of agendas and notes and things like that. I just, you know, how would we be able to say, you know, who was in attendance? I honestly, you know, looking back, you know, I'm fairly certain I was at all, but I can't say I was at all of them without, you know,
Right.
this was almost 4 years ago. And so, you know, how do we recreate an attendance? And so I think we need to understand logistically, like, what does it mean to recreate minutes? Because usually minutes attendance is a key portion of that. So without any of that data, I guess, are we relying just on our recollection?
correct. So when I talked to Ms. Warren, she said that she's recommended that everybody go back to their calendars and confirm whether or not they attended the meeting, if you still have a record of that. And then we will try and work to the best of our ability. We will make notes on the minutes that they're being recreated and attach anything we have to them that explains why.
Okay. So, so with that, then I'll entertain a motion to authorize Christine to be the point person and respondent to this complaint. And then I know, Mike, you sent me your notes already. Tom, I don't know if you have anything that you've been able to dig up, but if you do, just send it to me.
Okay.
But again, to recap, I'll entertain a motion to authorize Christine to be the respondent to this complaint on the building committee's behalf.
Yeah, I'll propose a motion to authorize Christine to be our point person.
I'll second that.
All right, Mike Weber,
Yes.
Tom Erb,
Yes.
and Mike Quinlan also votes yes.
Okay, so I'll start reaching out to everybody from the committee in 2018 and start putting together anything you have.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
No
Totally
problem. Thank you.
ridiculous.
And then speaking of minutes, I sent out and distributed minutes from our December 9th, 2020 meeting and our March 15th, 2021 meeting. Do we have any questions or comments on those?
They look good to me, Mike.
They look fine to me also.
All right, anyone want to make a motion to approve those?
Your turn, Tom.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion. I could do both. Like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from March 15th, 2021 and December 9th, 2020.
I'll second the
And
motion.
got a second from Mike. Tom,
Yes,
Mike,
Yes.
and Mike Quinlan also votes yes. And I believe I copied you on those, Christine, right? So you should have those for your files.
I'm gonna post them while we're in this meeting this evening.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, so we're gonna leave this meeting open since we're gonna be joining the SBC. We will open that meeting in approximately 7 minutes. I guess at this time, if any of the public had a question about the permanent building committee discussions, they can put it in the Q&A. Otherwise, we will bring up school building committee issues at 7. And I'm going to start promoting some of the SBC folks. Just in preparation. And
Hello, everybody.
Good.
Evening, folks.
hey, Jim.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Tina.
You know, how are you?
I realized I was being way too corporate there, so had to change my background.
Was that BU, Mike?
Yeah, that's the Data Science Center.
That's a cool project.
It is. It's an impressive project, no doubt. It'd be interesting to see it when it's complete.
If you guys could get lights released, it'd make my life easier.
There you go.
It'll be interesting to hear some of the how the facilities folks are like trying to clean the windows with all those cantilevers and setbacks.
Yeah. I don't think they wash a lot of windows over there.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
So there was a note just from Kenton Doyle saying the title of the Zoom event is New Elementary School Building Committee. That is accurate. That starts at 7 due to the fact that the Permanent Building Committee straddles both of the committees. That's posted as a meeting of both entities. We've only opened the Permanent Building Committee agenda at 6:30. The 7 o'clock agenda will be for the New Elementary School Building Committee. So they both should have been on the agenda posting. So thanks for calling that to our attention, Ken. Chris Mchugh Potts asked how many attendees were present for the PBC meeting. There's been a bunch of turnover since, but for non-panelists, I believe there were 8. It looks like we're still, oh, we got Tim too. Oh, we got a couple more minutes. There's Josh. Hey, Christine, you still there? I don't know. I've seen some discussion about the open meeting law, Governor Baker provisions. Do you have any updates on when? I know they talked about extending them past June 15th. Sorry. Extending them past June 15th. I don't know if that's happened yet, though.
So for the record, my dog is barking at somebody else's dog on Zoom. That couldn't be more 2020. So the governor's emergency order expires on June 15th. He filed legislation yesterday or the day before to extend, Zoom meetings. So we're just waiting for that legislation to pass and move forward so that we can continue that after the 15th.
Okay, thanks. Jeff Marsden. All right, looks like we have enough for a quorum. So we will go ahead and get started. I will open the meeting of the, sorry about that. My dog is not pleased with me. I will open the meeting of the school building committee now, and I will go back to my Governor Baker's statement, which I have subsequently lost. Okay. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Medfield Dale Street School Building Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen or view this meeting while in progress may do so by following the instructions on the agenda and meeting notice. I would note also for new attendees that this meeting is also being recorded. All right, with that, I will turn it over to Lynn to walk us through our agenda for the evening.
Mike, there's a few people in the participants list that should be
Yeah,
moved
I'm
over.
promoting them now. Yep.
Okay, great. First on the agenda is approval of the May 12th, 2020 meeting minutes. You should have received them in your meeting packet. Are there any questions in regards to those meeting minutes?
I have none.
Can we get a motion to approve?
So moved, Anna Mae.
I have a motion from Anna Mae to approve the minutes as presented. Oh, no, hold on, we lost Mike Marcucci. Let me get him back in. All right, so I have a motion from Anna Mae to approve the meeting minutes as presented. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
I've got a second from Tom Erb. I'll run down the list. Tom Erb,
Yes.
Mike Weber,
The Moxley Field and
Mike,
Yes.
And Mike Marcucci,
Yes.
Tim Bonfati,
Respect.
Yes.
And I,
Tim votes yes. Jeff Marsden,
Yes.
Anna Mae O'Sheabrook,
Yes.
nice haircut, by the way.
Thank you.
And Mike Quinlan also votes yes.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is a discussion in regards to the project schedule. We don't have a design update for tonight, but Tina, did you have that on your present? If you could give Tina the presentation right, she can pull up the schedule for discussion.
She should be able to. Pesky dog.
thank you.
He's not pleased because everybody else is out of the house and I'm busy on Zoom.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, hold on. Let me see. I have to switch screens.
We want to talk about 3 schedule paths tonight and get some input from the school building committee.
Sure. So let me preface the conversation a little bit. Obviously, we had town meeting where there was a citizens petition asking us to reevaluate the enrollment and the site selection. It passed 229 to 212, something like that. And so at the very least, we will do our due diligence to look at what that petition requested and decide how we want to proceed. So with that, I've asked the OPM team to look at, we have our current schedule, which has us submitting schematic design to the MSBA in July for an August meeting, leading up to a fall town meeting. We do have a commitment and a feasibility study agreement that we have to get to a vote by the end of November. What we were able to look at was a second schedule that would basically hold off and give us a little bit of time to process things and do a submission in September for an October board meeting, which would mean if we do proceed to a vote on the project, that would be in November, shortly after the October board meeting. So that would be the second option. And then the third option, should there be a desire from the SBC, to request of the MSBA, we would have to request, if we were to basically pull our preferred schematic report, we would have to ask the MSBA to do that. We would have to ask the MSBA for a schedule extension. We would need to go to the town for some additional funds. So I've asked them to lay out those scenarios so that we can have the discussion. And then, ultimately we'll need to make a decision about how we're going to proceed. So they've laid that out for us. So I'll let you walk through the schedule options, and then we'll open it up for discussion amongst the committee.
Okay, the first schedule here, the first path is the current schedule that we're on. We did receive a request from MSBA to make a submission instead of our scheduled July 7th submission of the schematic design. They asked that we push that back to June 25th. They have a bunch of proposals that are coming in for the August board, and they wanted additional time to review everything prior to the board meeting. So that's one thing that if we continue on the current schedule path, we will need to submit our schematic design submission by June 25th. What this means is 2 weeks prior to the submission of the schematic design, we have to inform them of the approval of the project budget. We're at a point right now where our cost reconciliation meeting is going to occur on June 2nd with the two estimators that are estimating the schematic design. And we would have to quickly put that together and put it before the school building committee for approval so that we could get the total project budget out to MSBA by June 11th, which is the 2 weeks prior to June 25th. So that's the little bit of complication that we have if we decide that we want to maintain our current schedule. So we looked at potentially another schedule, which allows us to do two different things. Tina, if you could move to the next one. The second schedule allows us time to consider the citizens' petition and what impact that might have on the project that we currently have. And it also allows us additional time to make sure we have costs accurate and that the SBC has time to really dig into the costs that we'll be presenting for approval. This gives us until September 8th to submit the schematic design in anticipation of a board approval by MSBA on October 27th. Again, this poses a little bit of complication in that very quickly we'll have to turn around and go for the town vote, which would mean a town meeting followed very quickly by a ballot vote. Both of these scenarios get us to a school opening on September 2024. So that is the good piece of this, that we can maintain the school opening that we've been discussing. The third path is really taking a step back and completely revisiting the feasibility study process and the schematic design process. And I just wanted to quickly note that this is certainly this is all conditional upon MSBA's agreement to extend our feasibility study, which expires on November 30th. And it would mean that we would have to extend that feasibility study for another year. And so it would be completely contingent on MSBA agreeing to do that. This pushes us out to a school opening of September 2025. And Tina, if you could go to the next slide that shows a blow up of what this means. We anticipate that if we decide we want to go this path, that we'll have to have a lot of discussions with MSBA on how we would approach this. I think the citizens petition asked us to revisit design enrollment. And as you all know, this would require MSBA to go back and redo their entire study on the design enrollment if they were so inclined to do so. So we
and also that they would require new information in order.
Right, it would require us to gather new information as to why we think that the design enrollment needs to be revisited. So
sorry, excuse me, but we've done this before, correct? Didn't we go to the MSBA and ask them to reconsider the enrollment?
We did discuss it with them
about a year
last
ago.
summer. Yeah.
Okay.
We went
What
to
was their
them about a
response?
year ago, but we went with a simple request, would they consider it? We didn't come to the table with any backup information as to why we thought that the design enrollment should change. We did provide some NESD enrollments that the school district had provided to them, but that wasn't sufficient enough. And we didn't have any other additional reasons for changing the design enrollment. So MSBA said that they would not be inclined to revisit it at that point.
Just out of curiosity, Lynn, what new information would you be able to dig up?
Right.
Well, we would basically have more years of design enrollment being different than what MSBA used
The
to
projections,
used for their projections, which, you know, may or may not be sufficient enough to, because MSBA first looked at a 10 years of design enrollment, but very quickly decided that they should extend it out to 20 years. So I'm not sure if a couple more years of design enrollment would be enough difference to them to, you know, decide to revisit their method of determining design enrollment. But that is something that we could, you know, we would have to talk with them and see how they would allow us to proceed with that. They could decide that we keep the design enrollment as it is, and then we could also keep the design enrollment as it is, but still revisit the feasibility study and schematic design process. So this path, this blow up here of the schedule just really tells you, shows you what the time frame would be if you were to revisit the whole process that we've been going through for the last 2 years. And it would first require, after we talk about how we are going to proceed with MSBA and whether or not we would be able to revisit design enrollment, it would require a town vote to appropriate funds to redo essentially the feasibility study and schematic design process. And the numbers that we've used here, basically, any cost that we would appropriate for the feasibility study and schematic design would not be reimbursable from MSBA because they've already committed funds to the first phase of the feasibility and schematic design. So this process is anywhere from 12 to 15 months, and it pushes us out, as I said before, a year in construction, which we used a 4% escalation factor, which is this $2,356,657 that's shown here. Both of the numbers you see here are ones that have been presented many times. I mean, the $1 million is the current feasibility and schematic design budget, and the escalation we presented in a previous SBC meeting at 4% annually. So at the minimum, we would be looking at a cost of $3,356,657 in order to consider revising the feasibility and schematic design.
So I wasn't going to jump into Q&A from the public just yet, but there is a question from Jerry Potts that is pertinent to this, and I think we should explain. Jerry's asking, why does it extend by a year? The work done prior to February approval is still good work. Isn't it only the work done since the MSBA February approval subject to change? The answer is no, there would need to be, especially if we're changing enrollment would start from the beginning. That's the first thing in the MSBA process that needs to be set, because that has domino effects across the whole project. And any sort of revisit of site selection means redoing the PSR phase at the minimum. So the PDP phase there is some overlap there. So it wouldn't be necessarily all of that, but there are other things like we would need to get the MSBA to have this discussion and get them to agree to all of these changes that we're proposing. And so that adds some time as well. So it's not just the schematic design process that has occurred since February. Lynn, I don't know if you want to add anything on that.
No, it would definitely require a complete redo of the feasibility study. And as you know, the feasibility study process, we've been in that for at least 8 months now, right?
Oh, longer than that.
Yeah.
We're well over a year, yeah, in the feasibility.
I mean, the preferred schematic report phase of it, so.
Right.
And this is significantly shortening the time frame for a revised feasibility study based on the one that we just came through.
And so one follow-up question from Jerry, if we decide not to ask for the enrollment to be revisited, does that still apply? So yes, because site selection is a key part of it. That would certainly cut down on the time extension if enrollment was not part of the discussion. But the site selection The petition that was passed included both of those things. So that's what we're responding to. But the site selection process would require redoing the PSR phase, because ultimately we would need to get to, again, a preferred schematic and then advance the schematic design phase before getting to a vote.
Right. And even if we could shorten the feasibility study phase of this, we would still be ending up with the completion of construction during the middle of the school year. So we would not be able to achieve a 2024 school opening. It would be at best mid-year of the 2024-2025 school year.
I mean, as it is right now, it's a fairly tight schedule. If we proceed on our current path, and we even if we do this delayed SD submission, it's a fairly tight path to get to our September 2024 open. So any sort of delay is going to impact that.
And the way Path 3 is laid out, it also squeezes up the construction timeframe as well, because it's finishing in November of 2022, and we want to be open in September of 2025. And with design following that, you see it's tightened up, very similar to Path 2, because Path 2 was finishing in November as well.
May I ask a question, Lynn or Mike or whomever?
Please.
This is Mike Mchugh. How different is the Path 3 schedule from what the schedule would be if we revisited this after a failed vote, either in the election or in the special town meeting? In other words, if the Wheelock site was proposed in the special town meeting in November and it failed, and then we switched back to something at Dale, and we can talk if we want to about what the something would actually be. But if let's say we switch back to an MSBA project at Dale, how does that schedule differ from Path 3?
So I don't know that. Go ahead, Lynn. Sorry.
I think it would be very similar to Path 3. It would just, Path 3 would start a little bit later.
I will say, like, there is still that conditionality. So if we were to have a failed vote in the fall, there's no guarantee. Obviously, there isn't with this path either, but there's no guarantee the MSBA would just allow us an extension of time to switch sites and, without basically withdrawing our SOI and resubmitting a new one. That's not to say that it's impossible, but I don't know that. I don't speak for them, so they would need to say that. So I think there's a couple of different approaches if there was a no vote. That's one of them. If we were to stick with the MSBA program, then there's really two options. One is that, the MSBA grants us an extension to go back and reevaluate. And then the other option is if they tell us, no, you have to withdraw your SOI and resubmit, because that could mean that, at a minimum of a couple of year delay. So those are the two options in the MSBA category for a no vote in the fall.
But it sounds like, though, just to compare what's on the table, that it's not like Path 3 gets the school opened 2 years sooner than having a failed vote and then proceeding ahead, both understanding that both options are dependent upon the MSBA's willingness to let us either do Path 3 or willingness to let us stay in the program and switch sites after a failed vote. I'm just trying to understand from a construction standpoint. It doesn't seem like we're saving ourselves a lot of time on Path 3 versus Path 4, or I don't know, maybe Path 1 with an unsuccessful result at the end. It's not so different as the school opening between Path 1 and Path 3.
Typically, when there's a failed vote, the MSBA will allow you to stay in the program if you can show that you're moving forward with the same project scope and budget that went before the town to be voted on, and that you think you have better, you can achieve a better outcome, either if it's by more community engagement,
Right, I don't want to interrupt you, Lynn, but I think you're talking about essentially though, going forward for a second vote with the same proposal.
Right.
What I'm
only-
trying to compare here, just to be clear, is path 3, where we're switching sites before we have any vote on the Wheelock site. And then path 1, where we stay with the Wheelock site and that fails, and then we switch sites at that point. That's the comparison I'm making, not between a failed vote followed by a vote on the same project that just failed. And it seems like the answer to my question
Right.
is yes, there's not a great difference in terms of when the school would open at Dale under either scenario.
The point I was trying to make is MSBA won't let you stay in the program unless you move forward with the
Oh,
same project.
I understand, but
You
we have to make it,
withdraw and then resubmit. That's all.
we have to make a decision now without certainty from what MSBA is going to do. So I think the answer is yes, there's not a big difference in time between when the new school in Dale would open between path 1 and an unsuccessful vote and path 3 where we switch sites now or switch sites before. I think the answer is yes, there's not a big difference.
I would say if you withdrew and went for another site, you wouldn't be able to start anywhere near the time frame that path 3 starts. It would likely be, as Mike said, a couple of years out before you could go back to the MSBA and be in the program again.
That's what I heard.
I would agree with that, what Lynn just said, Mike.
So any other questions on these sort of alternate schedules? Any feedback from the SBC in general?
Well, I had a question on Lynn's comment earlier in regards to town vote. And then she said something about a ballot vote.
Yep.
Tell me how that works.
So in order to have a debt exclusion passed, it needs to pass town meeting with a 2/3 vote. And so that's the supermajority. And then subsequent to that, it also needs to pass at the ballot box. So that would be sort of like a typical election. It would probably be a special one just for this. And it would have a single ballot question on it, basically authorizing the town to appropriate those funds. And that's only a simple majority vote.
Okay.
So I think, the point of this exercise is to look at sort of what the options are. I don't know that there's a clear message either way based off of town meeting. Obviously, there was enough of a constituency there to, support the Dale at Dale folks, and it was kind of split down the middle, pretty close with a slight majority to their favor. So I think that, at the very least, we need to look at all of the options and see, where we stand. I think that, we've invested a lot of time and money in this effort. So I think at the very least, we deserve a bit of a pause here with the SD set to try to have some more discussions with the community. I don't know exactly the best way to do that yet, but I'm opening it up to see if anybody else has any thoughts on that. But I do believe that regardless, holding off on the SD submission and maybe moving the town vote back to after an October MSBA board meeting is something that would be wise to do. At the very least, to give us some time to think this all through and come up with some way to have better conversations with the community. Thoughts on that? Don't stay silent on me, folks. Need to hear opinions here.
Yeah, no, I too believe that it was so close. And I don't, we cannot disregard those 229 votes. However, a lot of us got feedback saying that was a Monday at 5 p.m. I'm getting home from work. There's no babysitting. I can't just trust anyone, etc. So but I'm wondering, I had heard some thoughts about having a public forum, and, is it now, it's hard to tell with the Dale at Dale, what swayed, because I think there are different demographics within the folks who voted for the Dale at Dale. Like, they don't want a school, they don't want to pay the taxes, or they really, they're hard to set on Dale Street, or other reasons. But I'm wondering if, I thought I had heard that someone was talking about suggesting a public forum, perhaps to get more conversation, more than the 15 seconds, listening to the teachers, listening to the other side, just to really have a deep dive before the fall. Yes, no, maybe so.
I'm supportive of the idea, Anna Mae. I think the difficulty here is, again, I don't see a clear message. I know there's been some claims that a project at Dale would pass overwhelmingly. I don't know how that's possible. I don't know that all of the people that support the project would necessarily just support the project at Dale just because it switched over. So I don't know. I'd be interested to hear from you all.
I'm
I want to hear some
wondering.
more opinions.
Yeah, sorry, just to further that, in terms of, perhaps, we did not, I'm, the chair of the communications, we, maybe I didn't do a good enough job, in terms of getting information out there. So could we do, that last college try to at least get more information out there, either having a site visit at Wheelock, maybe even mapping, I don't know if that's realistic even, to map it out at Dale Street, because I really believe that if we could see the scale at Dale across, obviously we're not going to build a mock building, but at least the scale of it and how a mass rendering of how that would look at Dale, that would be just a different way of looking at it, and having more conversations. Again, more than that, just the 15 seconds, because I think, the teacher's voice was, Sarah Isaacson, was very powerful, and she didn't get to finish. And not a lot, only the folks that were there, or unless they, watch the recording. So I think there's more information before we make this decision to put the brakes on, personally.
Yeah, I was definitely a little upset that they definitely cut the teachers off on that. I have to say that I was a little disappointed in the behavior of the townspeople at the meeting as well. Rooting people down. I don't think that's where we've come to. And unfortunately, I echo Anna Mae's points about, I'm not sure if town meeting represents the entire town. However, I feel like sharing more information would definitely be beneficial. And to answer questions like Jerry's got right here right in the line here about, what if we build a brand new building right next to the old Dale, right? Do we get to use funds to tear the old Dale down? And then where do we park cars? We have to tear down the FAF. And what's involved with that? Can we fit it on the building? Where's the shadow cast on those people who live on Adams Street? Are they going to be upset about it? Right. So I agree with Anna Mae. Like, I think we should share as much as possible, even with the vote, to get it out there. I mean, and then continue our path. I think that I still believe in our plan, and it's definitely, we need to stay with it and just communicate more and more.
Mike, you have your hand raised? Mike Weber?
Yeah. So I appreciate Anna Mae and Leo talking about communicating more. I agree, but the fact that it's on a Monday at 5 p.m., when all the sports and everything else, and everybody with kids in school can't be there, especially with COVID, with no babysitters. I was one of them. So I'm sure that hurt this side, but personally, I'm very against going back on any of the work we've done to date. I'm absolutely not interested spending another year in feasibility. We've all decided collectively that Wheelock is the best spot. Some of the questions we're getting, we've been answering over and over and over, and they still come up. So either people don't want to listen, or they don't like our answers, so they just ask the question again, and that becomes very frustrating from my point of view. So, you know, option 1 is actually my preference when they talk about the schedule in. Option 2, I think that's fine because I actually prefer a meeting in October as opposed to early September. I think that becomes a better time for people to actually get to vote. Give us a little bit more time after the summer to actually let everyone know that the vote is coming, as opposed to, like, you know, first, second week of September when school just starts. But I'll tell you right now, I am not interested whatsoever in redoing a feasibility study at a site like Dale that, quite frankly, the building needs to be demoed. So that's my opinion.
We also have to raise $1 million again too at town meeting if to repurpose, correct? That's
Right.
So, yeah, I agree. It needs to stay at Wheelock or not at all, really, at this point.
Tim, it looks like you have your hand raised. I don't know if that was intentional or not. Do you have
Yeah,
something?
it was only, I'm on toggling between two meetings. so
Yeah, I know.
But I just want to register I believe we should extend this date. That's, I think, the question you put out, Mike.
The option 2.
Yeah, the option 2. And I do think we should explore, you know, although in my opinion, the vote was essentially 50-50. I think we should at least, it gives us time to explore the issues that were raised in that article further and explain them further. I certainly agree with Mike and Tom about, you know, I don't think it's better to go back to the MSBA, ask for an extension of the feasibility study, ask the town for an additional whatever, whether it's 750 or $1 million or something. It's certainly a lot of money to redo it. And, you know, to essentially, you know, not the work we've put in this time, it's all based on, you know, sound research. And so I do think we should extend the deadline, but I would not be in favor of option 2 or whatever the option is that says we go back to the MSBA and request
3
attention to the feasibility study and then ask the town for additional funds to redo the PSR and SD.
Thanks, Tim.
So Mike, I don't want to cut it if somebody else has raised their hand. Tim's hand's up again. I don't know if it's just.
I'll lower it.
Okay. So I have a little bit of a different way of looking at this. I don't think it comes to a different conclusion, but in thinking about sort of what we've been asked to do by the town meeting, obviously they've asked us to amend the proposal, asked the school committee and the school building committee to amend the proposal. I mean, it's an advisory vote, not a binding vote, but I think we do have to take it seriously. And they are asking us to review what we decided. And the article is not generic, right? The article is not just review what you decided, it's review what you decided in light of these 5 points. And I certainly don't think we ought to rush to throw all the work away and just switch and design another building on the basis of this. I don't think that's called for or necessarily a good idea, in part because I think the alternative hypothesis that the fallback from the proposal at Wheelock is automatically a 95,000 square foot MSBA brand new building at Dale is unproven. And I think we'd have to really examine the cost of that building relative to its functionality and relative to its educational benefit to see if that kind of MSBA building is really in the town's interest, or if we should be looking at a much more modest fallback option that probably would not be something the MSBA would support, but would extend the life of that site for a period of time. We don't need to get into that in too much detail, but I don't think we should be assuming that the necessary alternative is going to be a 70 million building one place or the other. I don't think that's necessarily true because the costs are high at both locations. And so I think that would require a pretty serious examination of what you're getting. I think we know what we're getting at Wheelock for the price. We wouldn't know what we'd be getting for the price at Dale. But I do think we have to give us, we meaning the committee, have to just give a serious look at the points that are raised in the article, and deliberate and reevaluate that site selection decision in light of the points that are raised there, which obviously involves a weighing of kind of the benefits of each site against the identified concerns in the article. And I think just asking ourselves seriously, are we too far locked into this? And so we're just not reconsidering it, but go through that deliberative process. I think we should do it in public, maybe in a couple of different formats so that different people can participate and be a part of it. I think beginning next week, we'll be able to be back in person more often with groups of people. And, we have a window here while people are before the end of the school year, and a window, even with the revised October deadline, to give this a serious review and consideration. And maybe we come to the end of that process and we're in the same place we are. Maybe we've taken a hard look at it and said, you know what, we're going to reconsider. But I think that is what is called for by the article, to try to do our best to credit and honor the vote that town meeting took. And we can have every debate about the nose counting aspect of it that we want, but it is a vote of town meeting. And I don't think we can just simply pass it by or view it as kind of a failure of communication. I think there may be a failure of communication, there may not, right? I mean, sometimes it just happens that people in good faith disagree about a situation, and maybe that's where we are. I certainly don't think we're in a position to make a judgment about this other than a judgment about what we think is best for the town and best for the educational system. I don't think we can make a pragmatic judgment saying one way or the other, because by far the dumbest thing to do would be to switch sites and then find out a year and a half after spending $1 million in another building that building failed too. and then we'd have two buildings, neither of which could be built. So I do think we have to go through that process. It will be more work for us in over the next 4 to 8 weeks, whatever that time takes. I don't think it's lost time, because we are so close to the end of the process with the design of the Wheelock building, and then we kind of see where we are in pressing ahead at the end. And I think as part of that, and while this is not really a site selection issue, it's a general issue. I do think we ought to make a request to the MSBA on enrollment. I think we ought to say, look, I mean, you certified this enrollment in October of 2018. Other than one cranky selectman, nobody really questioned it at the time, because we were coming off the great class size panic of 2017, and we'd had this, this increase in enrollment in that school year, coming into that school year of 100 unexpected kids that arrived. And so it certainly was not unreasonable when the MSBA gave us a projection that, again, that I thought it was high at the time, but it didn't seem as high at the time as it does now, because we did have this situation where our own internal district projections were off by at least 100 in some of the younger grades. And Dr. Marsden or Mike LaFrancesco might remind me that it was more than that. So, the context in which we agreed to that in October 2018, and that was right after we had the big override votes in May of 2018, and Leo was elected that spring, kind of all coming out of this increase in enrollment and the increase in class size in the lower grades. So it was certainly not, it wasn't a popular position to take at the time that we didn't have concerns over enrollment and the like. And we may be wrong as well. I mean, obviously we shouldn't take the school year of 2020, 2021 as the baseline for anything. But we do have 3 more years of information and that increase has not repeated itself. So I think we ought to make that request. I don't know. I'd be very surprised if the MSBA would base it on actual enrollment. I think given that we're at a historic enrollment low over the last 20 years, I'd be surprised if they just switched that drastically. But maybe they would look at it and say, look, there's 3 more years of data. 2020 had one of the lowest birth rates in the history of the country. We're now into this continuing cyclical decline after the Great Recession. And so maybe they'll look at it again and run the numbers again according to their algorithm and revise it in one way or the other. And I think in good faith, we ought to make that kind of request. And that's going to be, that enrollment will apply wherever we are. So that's kind of what I have in mind. And I don't think it's necessarily on a schedule basis looks a lot different than what Anna Mae and Leo are talking about. But I do think while it's got to be a public process and a public forum, it can't just be a Q&A. It's also got to be, I think, a discussion among ourselves and kind of going back over, okay, why did we reach this conclusion? What do we think about this? What do we think about that? And how do we weigh the concerns that are identified in the article against the factors and against the considerations and against the analysis that led us to recommend the Wheelock location? Because I think we did, consider some of those that were in the article already, but I think in fairness, you can look back at them and reevaluate them. And we have this window of time, over a 4 to 6 to 8 week period to do that, to see if our views are going to change at all, if our assessment has changed, or if at the end of the day, we're going to make our best recommendation to the town and see where the chips fall. So that's, sorry to be so long-winded, but that's kind of my thinking on it.
Well, thank you, Mike. Any other thoughts from the SBC? So what I'm hearing is that it doesn't seem like our option one, and I don't think option one is the right path right now. I do think that because we could still potentially proceed along the pathway to a November vote without losing any ground on a potential opening, should that be the path that we choose. I think from a formal perspective, I think that we should, at the very least, take a vote to postpone the SD submission to the October board from the August board. We are proceeding with the cost estimating. We're in the middle of the cost estimating process now, so that's going to reach its natural conclusion. I don't think that deserves to be stopped at this point. And there's going to be some time after that to really shake out the numbers and see where we are from a budget perspective. So I think a little bit of extra time for that effort would be helpful as well. If anyone's interested, I would entertain a motion to postpone the SD submission to the October board, which would be a September submission to the MSBA. Would anyone be interested in that motion? If not, then we can have further discussion. All right.
So that's essentially path number 2.
Correct. And then I think what we do is, I would think that, we would take up something like Mike talked about. Maybe I think we need to talk about the details, but having some sort of public engagement over the next 4 to 6 weeks of sort of reanalyzing our decision and having a Q&A and a discussion amongst this group, and saying to ourselves, let's take a hard look at the decision we made and decide whether it's worth revisiting or not, along the lines of what Mike mentioned.
I'm fine with, I like what Mike said. Mike is very thoughtful in the way he approaches problems in questions, and I respect that. I'm happy to do more due diligence and do path 2. That said, I'm confident that the decisions we made to date have been in the best interest of the school and the town. So I don't think that we're going to come to a different conclusion. The fact that the school opening between path 1 and path 2 is the same date, then I'm great with path 2. That's fine, and we can do that. But again, I just don't think that there's going to be a change of heart, because I believe that everybody in this committee went at this problem, with an open mind to think about what's best for the town. And I think that we're going to come to the same conclusion, because we all put our own thought into this already. So I'm fine with path 2. I'll second Jeff's motion.
Just to add, I agree with Mike, but I think it would be, now that folks are are more engaged now and want to know more, you know, and perhaps weren't following it at the beginning when we were doing the deep dive and, you know, the matrix, etc., that this is another opportunity to just go through that once again. And hopefully now that more people are engaged, they'll be willing to listen and have more information. Even though it was there, we're going to be a bit more public about it.
I would just request we don't do that matrix again.
Just the dialogue that followed. But, you know, I mean, I look at this committee and I see you, Mike, and people who are in the business, and, we did our due diligence, but I'm more than happy to do that deep dive once again to really, as an opportunity to engage more people.
So, I just want to add, I completely stand behind the work that this committee has done. I don't think any of the nefarious theories that are floating around are even remotely true. That said, a 2/3 supermajority on a project of this size is significant, and it's a high bar, and as it should be. It's a high bar to get over. I fully expect that when this does go to a vote, regardless of the path that's chosen, we will have 1,500 or 2,000 voters, which to me is a much larger representation of the, I think, 8,000 or 9,000 registered voters in the town. I don't see any way to predict how people are going to vote. I think that's just something that I don't see any way of really predicting that with any certainty. But I believe in the process that we followed. I believe in the stuff that we've developed. That said, I have no problem going back and taking a look at it again, say, based on any new information, if there is any, and say, is this worth reevaluating? I don't think to me, that's not a huge lift. And if that, satisfies a few people, then it's worthwhile to do. Ultimately, I think that it's a good effort to try to, get people to better understand the process that we went through, and maybe, maybe they're able to expose some new information that we didn't take into account in that process. I don't know. But if it means getting us closer to a 2/3 majority, then I think it's a worthwhile effort. So that's my 2 cents on the topic. All right, so going back, right now I have a motion from Jeff to postpone the submission of the SD package until September for the October board meeting, and I have a second from Mike Weber. Any other discussion before I move this to a vote? All right, not hearing any. Tom Erb?
Yes.
Mike Weber?
Yes.
Mike Marcucci?
Yes.
Tim Bonfatti?
Yes.
Jeff Marsden?
Yes.
Anna Mae O'Sheabrook?
Yes.
Leo Brem?
Yes.
And Mike Quinlan also votes yes. All right, so I think we can start to talk to the OPM and the design team about maybe what might be a good time before school is out to get some sort of public forum together for us to discuss this. So we can start to pull that together, Lynn, in the coming days, and we'll figure out a time and make sure it's fully publicized and we get as much attendance as we can.
Will it be a public or Zoom?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that we're getting closer to having options. My take is, whatever. I would prefer to be in person if we can, but I know there's going to be limits on that. I do think sooner or later we got to get back to in person. I think the dialogue tends to be more productive, and the discussion a little bit more deliberative.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, we could conceivably do one of each, Mike. I mean, if we're allowed to
True.
continue with the
Yeah.
hybrids, I mean, the second floor of town hall is set up to enable sort of a hybrid meeting where we could be together and have some people in the room together. And then for the people who prefer the Zoom could have it there. And then we could do one that's primarily in person that presumably we could get, Medfield TV to cover so that it's available on video later on. I mean, I would suggest that I don't think we'll do this in one shot because we don't want to be in the same situation of sort of running out of time. I mean, I'll leave it to the communications people and everyone else to figure out the way to break it down. But that's how I would think about it, is that if we did one that was a hybrid Zoomable and the other one that was in person kind of at different times, these have all been at night at 7 o'clock. I don't know if we could do one on a Saturday afternoon or something, but something that would make, just give more people an opportunity to be there before,
Sure.
people clear out towards the end of June.
A walk through Zoom walk through Dale would not be a bad idea either.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think we should have an open house at Dale. As a matter of fact, the thinking I was having, if Dr. Marsden was open to this, having some classes run and have people go and take classes in some of our existing Dale classrooms with 25, adults in there in the chairs. You
I
laugh,
don't know
Mike.
if I could fit in those chairs.
Don't. We get some extra ones for you. We get the, if I can fit in them, you can fit in them.
I don't know. My legs are a little longer.
No, but honestly, I think people should go and see. I mean, not just on the contrast side, but just the reminiscing side about what we're really talking about, and tour the old building, because it is a nice old building. There's characteristics about it that is nice, but at the same time, there's reasons for it. And I think that we should have a complete understanding of it. And, let's take a walk down memory lane and let's conduct a class in there, particularly in COVID times, and how that works. There's a lot of character in that building, especially those jogs into the classroom. I love those. It's like, those are great. But I think that, as much exposure to the building as we can. And then of course, any kind of, I think one of the legitimate things about the petition is around the reuse and the concern about what happens to the building after the fact. So I'd love to hear more about all the options we have open for the Dale Street building post opening of the new school. So, and I think those are two in conjunction things that would be really helpful, to the public to understand it, because I think that's a legitimate. We've talked a lot about what could be.
Yep.
I think it's time to hear some solid plans.
Yes, and that's absolutely fair statement, Leo. We have 3 options for that school, right? If we pursue the wheelock option, we have demolition, we have mothballing, and we have reuse. And the demo and mothball are the easy ones. We've got cost estimates for those. And then the reuse one, we are looking at that. There's been some discussions with the architects for the Parks and Rec facility. The permanent planning and building committee has taken a preliminary stance on it, but we are doing more due diligence around costs and what that might look like. So we would be able to have those sort of 3 options for the town. That's going to take a little bit more time. I had a call with them earlier. I expect that to be somewhere around mid-June. We will have a little bit more clarity around it. We will need to do a little bit of effort to really understand what it's going to look like. So they are working on that. I agree that that's something that we need to button up long before we get to a vote in the fall, potentially. But I would say, Leo, I appreciate the part about Dale. I think that to a certain extent, I think plenty of the Dalers will agree that there's a lot of people, there's very few people that would walk into Dale and say, we don't need a new building or we don't need to renovate. I think it's fair that to sort of acknowledge that there's most of the town would agree with the need to do something, outside of people who are just going to vote no matter what. So I don't know that we'll ever convince them either way. The real question that is in the community is more around, the location, and is that something that should supersede some of the other benefits that made this committee choose the Wheelock site. We didn't choose the Wheelock site based just purely on location. There were other benefits, including the educational benefits, and that probably needs to be more clearly defined and communicated. I agree that the teachers put together a great letter. It's unfortunate that they got shouted down for it because they supported the Wheelock site. But I know that they're not going to be shy about sharing their opinions moving forward. But you know, those are the types of things that we have to weigh. We have to weigh, is the location more important than some of those other benefits that moved us to choose the Wheelock site? So to me, that's the big question. It's less about, you know, do we really believe that a school is necessary or renovation is necessary? I feel like there's a lot of support already for that, and there's some people that will just vote no regardless because of tax impact, or they won't see a benefit or something like that. Just a couple thoughts on that off the top. All right, anyone else have any thoughts before we move on to our next topic? All right, not hearing any. What's next on our agenda, Lynn?
Next on the agenda is just a communication subcommittee update. NMA, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. So, yep. So we met last Thursday, and you know, the choice was, do we go all system go, or do we wait to get direction from after the tonight's SBC meeting and tomorrow's school committee meeting? So we've rescheduled our weekly meeting to Friday, and we decided to just wait to get direction. So tonight, I feel like, you know, tomorrow night, we'll get some direction working on the public forum. I think this is great. So we know we need to amp up, you know, what we're doing. And I think the questions like cost comparisons, you know, the use of Dale in the future, etc. We have some pretty clear issues to address, readdress, revisit. Just, you know, we've stated things in the past or published things in the past, but it just needs to, we just need to be more on top of it. And I know the agenda, one of the agenda items coming up is voting in Susan Maritan, but we needed someone who can churn out articles. She is a professional communications individual, marketing, and I think everyone got her bio, and she will take us, you know, to that kind of next level of getting information out there. So I'm very grateful to have the extra help on our committee. Yeah, and you know, we've got great people, but you know, but again, we're all volunteers, and just like everyone else, you know, we've got our own jobs and things. So just we need to work smarter and not harder. And Susan Maritan is a great team player. I've worked with her before on the coalition, and she took us to the next level way back when. And so I'm looking forward to having her on our team. We've got work to do.
Is that next up as part of this update, Lynn?
Yes,
should we
next
take up
on the
some-
agenda is for the school committee to take a vote on
School building.
approving, school building committee take a vote on approving Susan to be on the communications subcommittee committee.
Did anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns about adding Susan to the subcommittee?
In addition, I'd just like to add that she herself, in her communications, she's got a lovely tone, very respectful, and just, and I think that's important for us to communicate in the right tone as well. So I just thought I'd mention that.
Agreed.
Mike, I would just say that my experience of working with Susan with MCPE, she's been outstanding. So I think she'll be a great addition to this group.
Thanks, Jeff. Well, I'm glad she's volunteering. I know Anna Mae really needs some help. She's got so much on her plate between her role on the subcommittee, her role on this committee, and her role on the school committee. So really would help with that communications plan. So I'm all supportive of that. And unless anyone has any concerns, I'll entertain a motion to add Susan Maritan to the communication subcommittee.
So moved.
So moved.
It looks like Anna Mae beat you to it, Leo.
Second.
All right, I got a motion from Anna Mae and a second from Leo. Running down the list. Tom Erb,
Yes.
Mike Weber,
Yes, absolutely.
Mike Marcucci,
Yes.
Tim Bonfati,
Yes,
Jeff Marsden.
yes, wholeheartedly. Yeah.
Yep. Thanks, Tim. Jeff Marsden,
Yes.
Anna Mae O'Sheabrook,
Yes, please.
Leo Brem,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes. Anna Mae, you have some help for you, so thank you both for taking on that big challenge, and all the members of the communication subcommittee. I know there's a few others on there too, so thank you for that.
That's it for our agenda topics. So we're open to any new business or discussions.
Any new business from the SBC? All right, I will entertain questions from the public. If you could plug them into the Q&A, please put your name and address in there like we would at a normal open meeting so that we can identify you. I do have some outstanding follow-up questions from Jerry that we discussed a little bit previously. He says, last question, obviously you can answer later, which we're doing, but if we look at what was offered for the new construction option at Dale in the September vote, why does it start from scratch? The option reviewed was viable, 98,000 new construction. Why does it need to be from the beginning? I don't know what, I'm assuming when you say in the September vote, you mean the potential that we were going to do a town meeting vote in September. So now that would be November. So the question,
I think Mikey's talking about the site selection vote. I think the question is
if
based
you
on.
can clarify that, Jerry, we'll try to answer it.
That's what I think he's talking about, picking up from the site selection vote.
I don't want to assume.
He's talking about the site vote. He just commented.
Okay. So if we looked at what was offered for the new construction option at Dale in the September site selection vote, why does it start from scratch? It's not exactly from scratch, but there definitely would be some time that would need to be investigated. There certainly would all of the schematic design, but any sort of reevaluation of a project at Dale would have to look at a new building and the ad reno and determine if the new construction is the preferred option. There definitely is some overlap. We do have some options there, but those were the options certainly that this committee deemed flawed, at least in regards to its comparison to Wheelock. So there would need to be some time to analyze those options, make sure that they did align and with the educational program and make sure that they could achieve the same things. So we're talking about the same project that would achieve the same goals of the educational plan.
Plus, we'd have to document that as well and submit it to MSBA.
So exactly. So then we need to go through the whole MSBA process of documenting all of that, putting all the paperwork behind it, doing full cost estimates for all of those, or for that option through a schematic design process. We would need, in order to get those completed, we would need to do the same level of investigation into the site that was done at Wheelock. That means a full site survey, as well as some other investigations. So that does take some time. It wouldn't necessarily be, we're not throwing out the work that, we wouldn't throw out the work that's been done, but there is a significant amount of effort that would be required that hasn't been completed for that site.
Mike, can I comment? I think I also, he's going at the fact that we had, Lynn presented a number of $1 million to be spent, which is basically what this budget was to begin with. So I kind of agree with him. It won't be $1 million. My guess is it'll be $700,000, or, we'll still have to go to the town for money, but it's
Yep.
probably not the full million. Is that correct, Lynn? I mean, I know you put $1 million up there, but
I did. I just wanted a basis from,
Yeah,
where we
so-
were
Yep,
to
I mean,
begin with.
I understand you were guessing at it, and I get that. That's what we spent last time, but I mean, just holistically looking at it, it's probably less.
To
than
be
$1
fair,
million
to
or
just,
100.
I would add, just to be fair to what Lynn's putting up, and I don't think it'll be $1 million, because you do have to clean up the preferred option when you submit it.
Mhm.
But the $1 million we appropriated was probably under market by about 50%. Normally, people are appropriating 1.5. So we knew that going in, that we had we had a tight budget. So I agree with you, Mike. It's probably more in the 750 or so range, but I mean, it depends on, if we vote to request an extension, we'll do a much better, budget for it.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to, thank you, Tim. I agree. I was just trying to give some credence to the fact that it's probably not the full $1 million, that's all.
All right, next question I had was from Chris Mchugh. Based on similar situations in other towns, they did not need to appropriate the full amount for the first feasibility study a second time. For $1 million, the amount requested would be reduced by the amount spent on design. What is that amount? We also have reimbursement dollars that could be reapplied. I'm not exactly, for $1 million, the amount requested would be reduced by the amount spent on design. What is that amount? I don't know what that means exactly, other than.
I think she's suggesting that the building that was designed on the Wheelock site would just be placed on the Dale site.
I don't know if that's what she's suggesting. I guess what I would try to clarify is that any project that would shift gears to Dale would still need to be designed. And that would take effort from the design team to bring it to the same level to get it to a vote, because that just hasn't been done. So I don't think that we can take that off the table. There certainly are some things that were done in the PDP phase and a few things from the PSR phase that could carry over. Not all of it. And so there would be some effort to redo the PSR and then a full schematic design shift, because we did nothing on Dale for schematic design. So that would require a full schematic design effort. And that's where, quite honestly, a lot of the funds are spent in feasibility study, because there's so much more effort being put in. But is it an entire new feasibility study? No, but to Tim's point, we've already we probably didn't appropriate enough money for the feasibility study, and certainly kind of these continuing extensions are stretching things thin with our consultant team. So I do think that we would need to get, maybe it's not a full $1 million, but it wouldn't be that far from it.
The amount for the designer and designer consultants is $720,926 of the $1 million amount. So if she's asking that question, it's a good portion of the $1 million.
Thanks. Next question is from Joyce Sabia, 664 Main. Will we have costs for demo of Dale if that is chosen this summer? So we already have the cost for the demo of Dale. That we had that the end of last summer. I don't have it in front of me. I don't know if Tina or Lynn, you have that. I believe it was somewhere in the $1.8 million range.
It's like 1.75. I just sent it to John Thompson the other day on Facebook, so I'm checking that now.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. If you round up, it's about 1.8.
Yeah. So I hope that helps. But again, I think in terms of the Wheelock site, there's 3 options for the reuse, or there's 3 options for the existing building. It's demo, it's mothball, or it is, reuse, or in a relatively inexpensive, as much as possible fashion. And that's what we're still exploring. We will have all those 3 options laid out before any town vote. Well,
Yeah, like it's almost exactly 1.8. It's 1.796896. So
I should trust my memory a little more.
yeah.
Is what you're saying. It's failed me many times, so I'm glad I got that one right. All right. So Jerry is asking to speak. So I will give him a moment to speak. Jerry, please keep your comments pertinent to this discussion. And let me get you promoted here. All right. Jerry, you are on the air.
Thank you, Mike. So I first of all wanted to say that despite whatever social media or email threads are going back and forth, there isn't one person on the committee that I don't think has been busting their tail and operating to try to get a new school. And I want to thank you for that effort. There wasn't anything, at least in what I tried to present at town meeting, that was trying to denigrate or insult or try to say that, you know, you guys don't know what you're talking about. We try to raise issues on this topic as we are now to try to get a better understanding, and whatever the town votes on, you know, at the end of the day is what it is. But I wanted to just clarify, you know, the teachers from Dale, and I think you all know we've been very supportive of the teachers. We paid for signs to be put up around town about how much we love our teachers. We love our teachers. But the representation by the teachers and also Leo tonight, I just want to make sure, and Mike, I appreciate you speaking up on this. We want a new school. And what I would embolden you to think about, there was not one speaker, as passionate as they were about the Dale Street location, not one speaker said they weren't in favor of a school. All of them said, every single speaker from the Dale Coalition said that they were in favor of a new school. So I just hope we can kind of eliminate that from sort of this discussion. We will work very hard if Dale is reconsidered to help get a vote of a positive at a town meeting later this year. The other thing is we had asked the MSBA, I did a public information request for any situation that they had where they were not willing to accept changes.
Hold on, Jerry. Jerry, hold on one second. Can I just clarify one question you just said?
Yes.
In your statement, so you're saying that you're okay with a new school right next to Dale between Memorial
Not right
and
next to Dale. Why do you keep saying next to Dale? We're going to demolish, again, the 98,000 square feet.
I'm just curious. I'm just curious. So
Can I finish my sentence? Because you're misrepresenting it. You did it earlier. I'm not asking for.
No, I did nothing of the sort. I want to be very. I just want to be very
clear about it. The 98,000 square
Hold
foot.
on. I don't want this going off the rails. Let's have a discussion. Jerry, finish your statement, and then I think you know, if Leo has a question, I'd just ask that he pose that after you finish your statement.
Sure. To be very clear, the three options that were presented, final was an ad reno at 115,000 square feet, a new construction at 98,000 square feet that assumed 5.2 million in site preparation work, which included the demolition of the existing building. So the presentation that was done in September for the SBC vote, that option of the 98,000 square foot was a new building. It was not next to it. It was not, and in fact, I know there's been discussion of trying to retain. I don't even know if that's the best option. Norwood did a great job with a facade. A new building there meeting all of the current code in that location at 98,000 square feet was what was presented. That's the option, or at least one of the options that is considered. There's no scenario that we have promoted in any presentation. And if you look, you know, at the video and the materials we've sent out, we want a new building there, 98,000 square feet, same size, not smaller. And that footprint, if you put it there, you know, we believe if it was presented correctly, would not overwhelm the property, would not remove the field next to it, would not. So what we're really looking for, just to throw it out there, is because they're getting clarity on both sides about what's being asked, I would just suggest we have a forum prior to the public forum where we can at least have a discussion. Totally understand, you know, we will have a facilitator if you would like it, to just ensure that what we're asking for is clear. Because there's been, again, some spin on it, like Leo said, of building a building next to it and removing FAF. We've never talked about that. But we have asked if it's a 98,000 square foot building and there are going to be 370 students there-ish in the first years it opens, and the building is 575 in capacity, could we use that excess capacity for park and rec programming, and could be that factored into the overall discussion, not for MSBA reimbursement for the same building, but that we think creatively of being able to use that excess capacity while we get a new solution for whatever the park and rec. And at least we renovated an existing building, haven't added to the inventory. So that discussion, using excess capacity instead of modulars, things like that have never really been addressed in any of the forums. And we would just like to have a discussion on that. And if we put it in front of the town and they go, we hate the idea and we love Wheelock, that's what democracy is. But we just don't feel that even on these sessions, and I appreciate you giving me the chance to speak, there's been sort of spin of what we're asking. And we're just asking for an incredibly good school in a different location. And can we see the best option from this committee on what a Dale Street option, if that was the only option, give us the very best one that does everything we need to give a great educational experience. What does it look like? And I don't think we saw that in the fall. And that's really ultimately what we're asking. And if we do that and the town supports Wheelock, then we get it.
So I think, Jerry, what the confusion may be, and I'm going to speculate a little bit, and Leo can clarify if I'm off, but I know my confusion is exactly what you do support, because if it's a new school, then that's fine if it's the new build option. But I've also heard you quote this cost per square foot would be lower, and the only place that happens is with an ad reno.
No, that's not true. Actually, Mike, from the document you submitted, it's $40 cheaper per square foot for the new construction at Dale.
No, but the one you quoted was $550, which was the ad.
No, I quoted $560, which is the ad reno, but that was the one that was put out to the town of being ad reno was more expensive. Both options were cheaper per square foot. It was $40 cheaper per square foot for new construction at Dale.
So
because it doesn't have the 10 million in the in-site construction costs.
So just so we're all clear, what you're proposing, what you're saying you're in support of is a new building on the Dale Street site, which would be in the field between the two schools.
No, we would replace the existing building, take it down and put on that same site a new building.
Okay, so you're saying demolish the existing building. So what would happen to the school? Where would you move? You're saying to move those kids into existing schools, demolish the building, and then put a new building in its place.
We are 300 under capacity in the middle school. Lincoln actually has grades 5 through 8 in the same building. It's better than having the modulars, and we're over 100 under capacity to Wheelock at its peak in 2005. So rather than having modulars, our recommendation, and again, this would be a good discussion to have. Now's not the right time, Mike, and I know it's late, but
now is a very good
not the right time.
Discussion. Yeah.
Well, because I think
I'd like to explore it a little bit since you brought it up.
You've been preparing for this for a long time, so let's have this discussion, I think, right now.
I would look to Dr. Marsden and say, is that something that is feasible from an educational perspective to move the 4th graders into Wheelock and the 5th graders into Blake?
I don't see space there. I mean, if we're gonna start having 30 kids in a classroom or over 30 kids in a classroom, I mean, it doesn't make.
We're not suggesting that. And again, the reason for that,
excuse me, it doesn't make any sense to do it that way. Not at all.
Jeff, we could put the modulars on the back of Wheelock, a whole modular section of Wheelock and Memorial, like 25 off of each, or 12 off of each.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
We're 100 under in Wheelock right now from its peak in 2005, and we are 300 students under at Blake right now, which is more than, we're looking at 170 students, 180 students for those grades for a temporary period of time that saves about $2 million. But the reason that I'm saying, and I put it in the chat, is I think there needs to be a longer session prior to the public forum so that we can actually articulate these things, let you guys have an opportunity to understand what we're asking. I'm not sure in a.
What I'm not understanding, Jerry, is why does it need to be separate from a public forum? I mean, all of your supporters are people from the public.
Because what I heard from the public forum is it's going to be you guys presenting your case. I didn't hear that we were going to get a chance to present at that public forum. I'd love to.
Mike, I don't think that that's not the way I heard it. Mike, did you have any?
Can we just get back to the school thing again? I'm just trying to figure out if we have every room occupied right now with kids, and there's already kids in there. We're just going to put all grade levels of kids in the school. How does that work? I don't understand. I'm just confused at that.
So if we're 300 under capacity, I'm
Jerry,
just asking on the format of the school.
This isn't looking back at what the capacity was for. I'm telling you right now that there's no room in the classrooms. They're full. There's classes going on during the day. How do we then put more kids in there? That's what I want to understand.
So when we had 3,100 students in 2005 and we're now at 2,500 students, how did we fit? Because my kids went through the school during that period of time. So they were not in a parking lot or out in some modular. We have 600 fewer kids in our district right now. So I would point it back to you.
I would say the class sizes were really big in order to do that. But that's adjusting by class size. But what you're saying, and what I thought I heard is move a whole grade into a school as swing space. I don't see how that works.
Well, again, I think, Jeff, the only way that happens is to do what was done back then, which would be to significantly increase the size of the classes, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to look back. I don't think we were sitting at, and again, this would require a lot more information and discussion. I think it's a good, healthy discussion to have. And Jeff, you might have some great points on it, and I might be wrong on it.
Jerry, I mean, at 3,100 to 2,600, that's 500, and we have 5 schools. That's only 100.
I just think you're oversimplifying.
Actually, it's 2,500 now, Leo.
You're just oversimplifying.
I know the enrollment,
Jerry. Looking at it as a number problem. It's not a number problem. It's about running a school.
Okay,
so you can't oversimplify like that.
All right, so let us do this. So we know the proposal that Jerry's throwing out there. We'll, I think, take a look at it and see what would the impacts of that be. And obviously, Jeff feels that they'd be significant. And I don't know. Given the last hubbub in town about class size, it wasn't about increasing class size to add more kids to a classroom. So that would make me certainly nervous if that was impacting 2 schools with significantly increased class sizes. But I think it's short-sighted because yes, modulars aren't great, but it's a better solution in the short term, because it's a short-term effort and it's small dollars relative to the grand scheme of this project. Personally.
So, like, if I could just add, I think when you're looking at it from the population, whatever that was that Jerry was talking about when it was 3,100, the grade levels themselves were larger, so you could fit them in with larger class sizes. What he's discussing and what you're suggesting is moving a whole grade into a building, saying that there's space for it, but there's no space for it. That's what I'm just confused. I'm happy to listen and see if there's a solution, but it doesn't seem to make much sense to me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So Jerry, in terms of having I don't see the benefit of having sort of a separate forum just for the Dale of Dale. I believe this is a public forum. This is a public meeting where we're hearing all voices. We've always shared that. I know you disagree, but we've always allowed public input at every single one of these meetings, and the public forum would be no different. I think if I'm going to speculate about Mike's views, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the goal is not just to have a discussion amongst this group and have everybody listen. I think there is some level of feedback that would be received, and I'd be looking for what has changed that we didn't take into account in September, that and what might we reconsider. But I think to Mike's point, it's really about sort of almost redoing our deliberations and having people sort of hear what maybe they didn't get a chance to hear from us in September and how we made the decision, and then maybe if there's something new that might change our minds, that would be part of the process. I don't know, Mike, do you have any thoughts on?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think certainly as part of the public forum, we should consider the alternatives that Jerry is suggesting, right? I mean, I think part of any of these projects, and maybe he's right. I'm not ruling out that he's right. I mean, I would say that I think, as I said at the outset, the case for a school, a 98,000 square foot new school at Dale is unproven at this point. And I don't know, and I'm certainly would need a lot more to understand why that would be kind of worth that investment. Even if you could somehow, squint and get it a little cheaper than what's at Wheelock, I don't know that you're getting anywhere near the educational benefit that you're getting from Wheelock. But again, we should consider those proposals, because one of the things that is always on people's minds with any project is, and we saw this with the hospital, we saw this with any other major project, there's always a suggestion, well, why didn't you look at this? Why didn't you look at that? And if this is what Jerry is suggesting, they've obviously put a lot of time into looking at these things. We should, consider what he has to say. Again, I don't think it needs to be a separate meeting. I mean, I think our obligation here is to respond to the article that was actually voted on by the people at town meeting. But I think part of our discussion should be, okay, why didn't we look at that? Did we look at this? How does it play out? What does that mean? What does that work? How does that work out educationally? If we looked at it that way, does that proposal change anyone's view? Does anyone think, well, gee, if we had thought of that at the time, we might think about it differently and explore that in a little more depth, right? We can't do it right now, but I think as part of that forum, I think for anybody, not just Jerry, but anybody who has sort of a, why didn't you think of this kind of question? Or what about this proposal? I think that's the kind of question you should entertain, right? And examine it and look at the details of what we did look at and how that would factor in and what it means. And that to me is part of the process of reviewing this. And again, I think we did look at a lot of this stuff, and there is a lot of the evidence there and a lot of the information is there, but I think looking at it from a different perspective is always going to be valuable. And so, how that exactly is structured is, is kind of up to you, Mike, but I do think we ought to entertain kind of these kinds of suggestions and proposals, and here's what we're looking at and as the alternative, because I agree, at least from Jerry's perspective, he's been clear that he favors a new school if it's at Dale. And I have no reason to think that isn't true, right? I think that he does. And I think that speaks for some element of the Dale folks. I'm sure it's some that are just happy to have it not on Elm Street. Wherever it is, they'd be perfectly happy if we built it at the hospital or we built it, someplace else if it wasn't, as long as it's not on Elm Street. And then others have a different perspective on it. So there's always people who are going to be against anything, and I don't have any reason to think that represents the views of the Dale folks. The against anything people haven't turned out yet, most likely, because they wait.
You're right, Mike. I think the only other thing the only other thing that I would suggest, the reason to have a meeting before that, and it can be open, is I actually don't want to have these gotcha moments where we're holding up a document going, look at this. I would rather lay it all out to you guys and have you openly, and if Jeff disagrees on that location, that's great. It's the first time that I've actually had anyone answer get into any deep discussion on this, and it would be good to pull some data and then look at it. And there probably are 5 to 10 issues that are substantive, including the reuse of Dale. A lot of us think adding a new building is going to be more expensive over time. Well, let's project it out. So we could give you the information in an open forum where we're discussing this, not, at the end of a meeting, throwing something in a chat that gives you the best opportunity to present the options, open and honestly to the town so we can make the best decision. That really genuinely is all we're asking for. And it's not spin. We have done our best to try to point at documents and discussions and tapes and recordings where we think things have come up, but it's not a 60 minutes, gotcha moment. We're trying to make sure that if we spend 70 or $80 million, the minute we break ground, it's done, whatever choice we're going to make. And we want it to pass. So, there are people on this committee I have a ton of respect for. And if at any point in time, what I'm saying is taken as anything other than I'm passionate about trying to make sure we, as a town, have all of the open data, not to question your decision, but, there are 55% of the people in the town who don't have kids under the age of 18 who are concerned about open space and water and these other things. And their voice matters too, as well as a great education. So how do we find the right compromise? I think that's what we all want. So I would just suggest if we can have some intermediate step, not to debate, but to share with you what our concerns are so you can be better prepared to discuss at the forum. And if those issues get addressed, then I think the town is well served.
Jerry, I would suggest, Jerry, why wouldn't, can you just submit those in writing? I mean,
Right.
if we have research
That's
to
what I was
do,
gonna say, yeah.
we're not going to be able to do the research at a meeting, whether it's with you or in a public forum, right? I mean, part of it is if you're going to respond, you know, if you have a detailed proposal, you know, I think we could, not me, but the people who are going to gather the information can gather the information, as opposed to, because that you're right, we do have to be in the situation where one person says one thing, the other one says the other thing, and really all you have is a face on Zoom to evaluate. And if you have stuff that you want us to look at, I think it's fair to give us those things you want us to look at, so we have some detailed information. We can have that discussion. I mean, any meeting with the committee is going to have to be in public anyway.
Sure. And
right?
we would
So-
encourage it. We want it to be in public. We're happy to give you that list. All I would say is that in the past, as has happened here, and it happened with the warrant committee, there were questions that came up. There was intentions that were, like, I've never used the word nefarious. I don't think anyone's nefarious. I don't, you know, but there's been these assumptions on some of the things that sort of, you know, Leo thinking we want a new building next door in the open field. That's not what we want. We've never said that. So, you know,
No, you cleared that right up, Jerry, and I apologize.
Yeah, but I've never
said
said
down the existing, and you want to tear down the existing. That was a good clarification from Mike. That was what I was looking for. You want to tear down the existing and put it on the same site.
That was one of the three options. So we had an ad reno, we had a tear down, the 5.2 million covered that. So, but these are the things that if we can submit the questions, then I would just suggest we have, and it can be open, or we can be just with you, Mike, or one or two people. So it's not a, you know, doesn't necessarily to clarify any of those questions. We are totally in the spirit of just truly trying to get as much good information in front, as balanced as possible, with the pros and cons for each. And then people, you know, 2/3 are going to need to vote on it, and we want the same 2/3. We want to vote.
So, Jerry, I do just want to address, you know, as you mentioned, that you have not used the term nefarious. I'll agree with that, but your group has. And maybe not that exact term, but there's been many accusations of conspiracy theories. We even had to address, there was people online today saying that because there were missing minutes from 2018 because of what happened with Mike Sullivan, that we were trying to hide something. And
no, like, and Mike,
wait, let me finish, Jerry.
Yeah, okay, you're sorry.
I've given you plenty of time to talk.
Yes, you have. Thank you.
So, you know, if you want to really get behind that rhetoric, you've got to understand, and you've got to call out people if they're behind that rhetoric, that support your group, and say this is not what we support, because I don't see that happening. So I'm not looking to get overly defensive about it. I have a thick skin. I've had my name dragged through social media. I don't care. You can call me all the names you want, because to me that doesn't matter. What matters is what's best for the town, and I stand behind the way I've supported this project so far. And Jerry, I will say you have not made those accusations, but there are groups and there are people in your organization that are, and I don't see either you or Chris changing that or saying that they shouldn't be. So if we're going to get that, we are going to get a little defensive at times, because that's not fair.
You have a lot of emotion in it, and you should.
Right.
You put a lot of time in it.
So if you want this to be a good dialogue, I would suggest that when your supporters are doing that, that you tone them down and say, look, we want to have a positive discussion here. I'm all for it. I'm all for having a positive discussion. I've given you airtime. I've given Chris airtime more than any member of this community. So I'm all for having that discussion. And we may, at the end, as Mike mentioned, we may just agree to disagree.
Sure.
I don't know. But I'm willing to commit the time to exploring the options that you want to put out there. And if you want to submit those, as Mike mentioned, in writing, I'll commit the time to exploring those with the team and making sure you get answers. And, you know, and maybe pros and cons to each of the things that you put forward. So I'm going to leave it at that. I think that for this evening, it's been a good discussion. I think I got to see if there's more Q&A, but I would suggest, Jerry, that if you want to put proposals out in front of this committee, that you do that so that we can respond to those in a public forum.
Sounds great. And if there's any clarifications, maybe we can do it the old fashioned way of picking up the phone and talking with each other. You know, I think that probably saves everyone, you know, time, energy, and effort. And Mike, I do have to say one thing. The reason I got involved in this project is what you said after the public safety building, where there were a lot of people who complained it was too big. And you said at the time, where were you when we had these discussions? And I shut up instantaneously after you said that, because you were totally right. That if you're not invested in the process and you don't go to the meetings, you can't lob grenades at the end and complain about it. So you're the reason I'm involved. And you probably rue the day you said it.
No,
but
no, I have always taken the stance that I want as many people involved in speaking as possible. That said, as I've mentioned multiple times in these meetings, there is no option here that gets unanimous support. There's going to be people that are going to vote against it. There's going to be people that disagree with our decisions. That doesn't make them, that doesn't mean that we are making, you know, poor decisions. We're making the best decisions that we can with the feedback that we have. And, you know, some people just may never agree with that. We have to be comfortable with that as adults, that this isn't, you know, just because people disagree with us, they're not evil. So I just want to make sure that, you know, we're having that good dialogue. We have to have it in public. We're required by law, and we want to continue that discussion. And we want, I want as many voices as possible. I've said that from the beginning. So I have no problem. Like I said, I've given you plenty of airtime, Jerry, and I will continue to. I'm not looking to silence anyone.
Thank you.
All right. Nothing like a good lively discussion. I appreciate that. All right, next up, Chris Mchugh Potts. This statement was in the 2013 PBC plan for public safety building. The design team, I should say, quote, the design team reviewed the Dale Street School with Alan Peterson, Director of Facilities for the Medfield Public Schools, on January 16th, 2013. Alan was able to provide the design team with a complete set of construction documents for the original school. And also the original design anticipated an addition to the east side of the auditorium / gymnasium that would be the mirror image of the present classroom and connector. Can we make available those documents for public view? Where are they now? I don't know the answer for that. I'll have to check. Amy, do you know where those might be? Amy, are you still with us? Maybe we've lost Amy. All right. I will have to look into that. I don't know where the existing conditions drawings are and specifically what these refer to, but I will investigate. All right. Next up, I'm going to go to Tim Knight. Tim asks, I would like to clarify from Dale at Dale on how their plan would mitigate the educational and social and emotional impact that is lost with the campus model, which is a key driver behind the recommendation from the school committee. I would also like to hear about how they propose to mitigate risk the students will be exposed to as we shuffle them around between schools during the construction period. How does Dale at Dale address the educational and SEL benefits that are at risk should we select the Dale site? I'm confused why that is constantly brushed under the carpet in favor of open space / cost. So I'm not going to get into, I think there needs to be some sort of side communication. That's really not a topic for this evening. Obviously, there's been a lot of benefits to the Wheelock site that we've discussed, and the Dale at Dale group has their own view on those. I'm not going to play moderator between those two tonight. So thanks for the questions, Tim, but I am going to table that. All right. Tom Powers, there was a dude who literally lied on camera before voters and townspeople on stage about what the EP letter said. I didn't hear any of you speak out when he said the project would have no impact on the town's waters. Tom Powers, 24 Elm, comment. I don't know exactly what you're referring to, but the environmental partners said that it poses no significant risk to impact on town water. I don't know who said no. I don't know who you're referring to, but the way it was worded was it poses no significant risk to the town water supply for the drinking water. All right, and Tim, Jerry noted that he's happy to answer at the appropriate time. So maybe you guys can connect somehow or facilitate getting you those answers. All right, and then finally, I've got a question from Chris Mchugh. MSBA documents show Blake and Medfield High School being under capacity. I also have records from years when Wheelock was at its peak, plus town annual reports, and the class sizes were within our school policy range despite the student enrollment. Why does MSBA show that Blake is under capacity? I don't know the answer to that. Jeff, do you know why the MSBA would show that Blake is under capacity the way this?
I don't know. I haven't seen it. I mean, maybe they look at enrollment in square footage and just use that algorithm. I don't know. I haven't seen it. It's like what I said to Jerry. It's about the number of classrooms and the number of kids you have. It's not just increasing class sizes. You only have a finite number of classrooms to put kids in. And if you have, like say for Wheelock, if you have 8 or 9 classrooms per grade in second and third, then you have special education classrooms, a music classroom, an art classroom, or a foreign language classroom. There's no classrooms left. So it's simply, that's what it is. And that's why in the past they put modulars in at Dale and that kind of thing, because there's just not enough space.
All right, so that's what I have for questions. And does the SBC have any comments or concerns before we close the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, we've got a motion to adjourn from Leo. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second.
Second from
Second.
Tom.
Second.
Actually, before we adjourn, Lynn, when's our next meeting?
We have it scheduled as June 9th.
Okay.
So just real quick, are we gonna have, maybe we could just in regard to the communication, I know there's gonna be some work to be done and I'm just curious about what people's thoughts are about talking about having some sort of a public get together, whether that's multiple get-togethers or 1 or 2.
Yeah, so I think what we'll do is we'll probably talk about it amongst the project team and put a proposal in front of the SBC at our next meeting, what that might look like, and then we can tweak it and then put the plan in motion. Does that sound fair?
You want to do it at our next meeting? Is that what you said, Mike? I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, basically what I'd like to do, if you're okay with it, is work with the OPM team and design team to sort of lay out, the next month, let's say, of when those might happen. And then at our next meeting, if everybody's on board with that, we'll put the plan in motion. If we need to make some tweaks to it, I think we just need some time to sort of pull together a plan that we're not ready for this evening.
No, I don't disagree with that. I was just, okay, yep, that's fine. I mean, June 9th is still, school's out the next week after that. That's all. It just becomes summer after that. It becomes, so that's fine. We could talk about it then.
I mean, unless somebody wants to, put a date out there now and we can start formulating what the agenda might look like.
No, that's fine. I think if we could do that between now and the next meeting, we can probably act on it quickly at that point.
Or we can move up the meeting from the 9th if.
Well, actually, Gina, you've got the calendar. We had reserved, we had a community conversation on the 13th, which we had 33 attendees, which I thought was well attended. And Gina, I believe there was another May and June date on that calendar. I just don't have it handy. I'm wondering if Gina has it handy.
I'm looking for it right now.
To Mike's point, I think he's right. You know, time is ticking, and if we could, but
Yeah,
I know
so, I
everybody's
mean,
got to coordinate their calendars.
There's two things, or really, there's three things we can do. We can sort of regroup and pull a plan together and meet on the 9th. We can sort of do that probably maybe a little bit quicker and meet, you know, next week. Or we can sort of pick a date now for a public forum before school is out and just sort of decide on what the final, you know, agenda and you know, what the forum looks like at our next meeting.
I do think that the forum probably needs to be planned and well advertised in advance. Yeah, and you know, and not to take away, obviously, you know, some of the ideas I heard were very questionable, but not to take away from the planning we've done. I think we do need to reshare out the work that was done around the Dale site and the proposed possible buildings and all the Dale sites. So we need to have all that information, you know, to be reshared in that forum as well, so that you know, all those points that were raised can be addressed, and the points to be raised, you know, to be, you know, offered can be addressed as well. So I think there's a balance between the timeline between when we have it. I know it's going to be the summertime, but probably at least one of them needs to be maybe early September. I mean, just so that people are back from vacation. I'd hate to push it so close to the special town meeting, but
I mean, you know, there's certainly, ultimately, I think we're going to need to decide whether we are pursuing the wheelock option and then a vote in the fall, or are we pursuing, you know, a complete revisit of the site selection. And I think that's sort of the first step. And like Mchugh, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your thinking around that was that should happen, you know, within the next couple of weeks. And then, you know, obviously then we'll have a path forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think realistically looking at the new schedule, if we're going to, I mean, shift gears and instead of submitting a proposal on Wheelock, ask for the extension of time in path 3, we've probably got to do that by, I don't know, Lynn, do you think August? Like if we were going to make that request, because otherwise we're not going to make the submission for the October board meeting. So I think it's a June and July activity. Obviously July and end of June is more summer, but you know, because of the, if the Zoom is extended, we can do some work that way. I'm not going anywhere for any extended period of time, but others may be. I mean, that's just the nature of the calendar. If we're going to give a fair review and then be in a position to reevaluate in that period of time and say, okay, no, we're not going to pull the plug. We're going to go ahead, or we're going to request the extension, and we'll have a special town meeting to vote to appropriate the money, right? Instead for the feasibility, instead of for the building. I mean, I think, or, something in between. So I think it's a June, July thing. I think in terms of doing an in-person forum, that's probably got to be in June before a lot of people leave, but you could probably do, we could on a date that works for most of us if we're going to do the hybrid of the Zoom later, because people could zip in and participate via iPad from New Hampshire or the Cape or wherever they are at that period of time. So I think that's kind of the window that I'm thinking of for doing this.
Yeah, I think we would want to, if we were going to change direction, do that before the September 8th.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the date I was looking at, Lynn, was September 8th. That's when we would have to submit the SD set, right?
So Mike, can we look to the week of the 14th to have a public forum in person?
I'm okay with that. That's
during that week.
I'm wondering, folks, if we could consider, so since we have June 9th on the calendar, could we take care of business either before or after the public forum, and or have the public forum first and then take care of business afterwards as we have that date? My only fear is that the week of June, the last day of school, people are kind of in a different mindset. And I do want to just mention that the intention of the communication subcommittee is to have monthly kind of community conversation. So we are planning to have it through June, July, August as well. And perhaps we can consider that June 9th for either the hybrid or the in-person. Or is that too soon? But I feel if we're kind of going, having the discussion again, it might.
I think you're right on. I mean, that's my concern about getting into the summer, people just will scatter. And even with the, I hear you, Mike, about the iPad, but oh, look, it's 8:30 and it started at 7. Oh, I missed it. I don't know. I think having people's attention is important. And unfortunately, we are, after this year, people are definitely itching to, get out of town, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just think the 9th is only 2 weeks away. I just wonder if that's enough time to really get the word out and arrange everything.
Yeah.
I agree.
I
I don't think it is, Mike, and I appreciate what Anna Mae is saying. But I think I agree with Mike Marsden that says we're just dealing with the schedule. As long as we have, like, it is what it is. Like, we could do it. I think June is the right time, personally.
I think the week of the 14th seems to be a good balance. I know it may be, last week of school and stuff, but I think we need a little bit of time to make sure it's communicated well, because if it's not, then, we don't want that. We want people to feel like it was put out there in a fair way and everybody had a chance to show up.
I mean, what if we did it? What if we did it on a weekend? We did that one like on the 19th or the 20th, which would be, towards the end, and people could come and at that point, and then we could schedule sort of a hybrid one that at some time that works for us. And then, it may take an additional meeting and discussion for us beyond that as well, because, you want to take the feedback, take the input if other things come up in the meeting that we're going to talk about. But I think it's easier to get 5 or 6 or 7 or the 9 of us together than it is to get however many people from the town who want to come. So that would be my suggestion for the in-person one, to do it on a weekend afternoon when it's not going to be, first of all, not going to interfere with my 11U baseball practices that I'm coaching this summer, most importantly, but but that's just me. But otherwise, that might be a good time for a lot of people, and a different time than we've held these usually.
And that's what Jess Riley is suggesting as well. She suggested that in the Q&A that we do.
Well, then I disagree. If that's Jess says that, I disagree. Sorry, I take it back.
She said Sunday afternoon. I think that's Sunday afternoons are a good time.
All right. Well, why don't we do this?
It's not football season. It's not, as long as it's not football season, we're good. Yeah.
Oh, Jesus, Leo.
So are we okay sort of stating that we think that maybe the Sunday, the 20th, we can sort out a public forum?
So that's Father's Day.
Father's Day.
Oh, that's Father's Day.
So I think that any weekend after the 19th, you're going to get less people in town.
Agreed.
So, excuse me, after the 18th, you're going to get less people in town. So, I mean, if you're going to do a weekend, then maybe it's the 13th. That's Sunday afternoon on the 13th. Maybe that's
That would be my vote. Anything after school, it's just not going to happen. I don't
So how do people feel about Sunday, the 13th?
Sure.
At least it's not Friday, the 13th. All right. Seems like that's a good target. So why don't we target that?
Is this
And
for in-person or hybrid?
I believe in person is the goal.
So I think we would probably use the current guidance around graduation that the state has given us, maybe apply those rules to this event where we would have to have people inside, masks, and 6 feet if they're not in the same household. So I think that might be the way we want to look at this. If it's outside, the state would require no mask for us anymore. But I think, if we're going to be in a school, we should probably adhere to those requirements.
I think in the interest of perhaps getting the most people outside might be better if the weather cooperates. But that also makes it a little bit harder to, show presentations and images and options and, you know, slides, et cetera.
We
So
thinking
lots of
early
good work.
afternoon on that day?
Uh,
I don't know, Jess had suggested late afternoon. I don't know if.
Yeah, whenever. I just know that, you know, I've met with religious folks in town for last couple of years around graduation, so I wouldn't want to have
Overlap,
any issues in
yeah.
the morning on Sunday. So I think
Yeah, no, definitely not morning, yeah.
okay, yeah. Yeah, late afternoon would be great.
What, 4, 5?
Yeah.
4 or 5?
Yeah, not too late, because obviously, you know, Sunday night, we don't want to keep people out late.
It's the last week of school. We're good, Mike.
All right, so we will move ahead with that. I do want to address, Tom Powers put some repeats about some statements that were made. The statements were not made by anyone from this committee. I believe he's referring to statements made by Bill Harvey from the Water Committee about risk for the water. So I would suggest that he bring that up with Bill Harvey and the Water and Sewer Commission. And he states that the format is the exact opposite of open dialogue. Why can't anyone besides Mike see the questions? That's Zoom for you. I don't know I don't know that there's a better way to do it.
We can
There
see all the
probably
questions,
is.
Mike. We just let you
What?
read them. I said, we can see all the questions. We just let you read them.
Yeah, but I think his point is the other attendees can't. So that's why I read them off. I, you know, try to make sure people understand what the questions are that are being asked. So I know it's not ideal, and we're getting back to, hopefully getting back to in person, and then everybody can see everybody and listen to all the questions as they're asked.
But rest assured, Mike, when Zoom reflects on all this conversation, they will add it in as a feature going forward in their update.
I'm sure, and then they'll change 10 other things as well. All right, so I think what we're looking at now is a June 9th SBC meeting and a June 13th community forum. We'll work towards those goals. I still have a motion from Leo to adjourn and a second from Tom. Does anybody have anything else to add before we move that to a vote? Okay. All right, running down the list. Tom Erb.
Yes.
Mike Weber.
Yes.
Mike Marcucci.
Yes.
Tim has since left us. Jeff Marsden.
Yes.
Anna Mae O'Sheabrook.
Yes.
Leo Brem.
Yes.
And Mike Quinlan also votes yes. Thank you, everybody, and have a great evening.
Have a
Thanks for
great
coming.
evening, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.